Welcome back to Two Pretty Good Bad Men, an Alias Smith & Jones podcast. I'm your host Tabitha, and thankfully we are getting a little reprieve from all the separation episodes for the next couple of weeks. Today we are covering episode 8 of Fistful of Diamonds. It was shot at the end of January and the beginning of February of 1971, and it aired March 4th, 1971. And it is another con episode. I've told you before that those tend to be my least favorite episodes, but I do like this one. I just can't figure out if it's because I actually like it, or if it's because it's just such a relief after 3 episodes in a row with the boys apart for most of it. The story was once again by Roy Huggins, and the teleplay was by Robert Hamner. We've covered Hamner before. He wrote the teleplay for Exit from Wickenburg, and he will go on to write one more episode this season. It was directed by Jeffrey Hayden, who we've also already covered. He previously directed The Wrong Train to Brimstone, and he'll go on to direct many more throughout the series' run. Our guest stars this week are John McGiver as August Binford, and I instantly recognized him from The Manchurian Candidate, where he played the senator. He was also in Midnight Cowboy, Breakfast at Tiffany, and The Apple Dumpling Gang. Yeah. He was a regular on a short-lived Jimmy Stewart show. I had no idea that Jimmy Stewart had ever had a show. And he once guest starred on Pete Doole's previous show, Gidget. He will also guest star in one more ASJ episode as a different character. Sadly, he died not too long after this in 1975 of a heart attack. Next, we have Michelle Carey as Betsy Jameson. As an actor, she doesn't have a ton of credits to her name, but she still managed to make a guest appearance on It Takes a Thief. That show haunts me. She also guest starred on Love American Style, Gunsmoke, Wild Wild West, The FBI, and The Man from U.N.C.L.E. Aside from acting, she had quite a lot of talents. She was a child prodigy at the piano, a horseback rider, and when she quit acting, she became successful at flipping houses in Southern California. Good for her. The character of Lom Travers is back, this time not played by James Drury. He's played by Mike Road in this episode, and he will also go on to play him in another episode. Mike Road did have a long live-action television career, but he also did a ton of voice acting for Space Ghost, Johnny Quest, The Fantastic Four, and the new Scooby-Doo movies. Not like the actual movies, that was the name of the series. We also have Sam Jaff back as Soapy, and let me tell you a little bit about where the name Soapy came from. He's named after a real con artist from the 1800s named Jefferson Randolph Smith. He got the nickname Soapy because of a con game that he pulled where he would supposedly wrap up bars of ordinary soap in front of a crowd with $50 and $100 bills in them, and then he would sell the bars for $1 to $5. He had an accomplice buy one of the bars with soap and pull out a $100 bill as proof that he'd done it, and that would spur the rest of the crowd on to buy their bars of soap, but theirs would have no money in it. He used that swindle for 20 years. He pulled much larger cons too, with fake stock exchanges and lottery offices. He set up his operation in Denver, and he didn't target locals, just travelers. And he apparently gave a lot back to the city, and the locals liked him. Eventually, he was shot to death. You play a stupid game, you win stupid prizes. So everybody stop your soap scams right now, okay? His soap swindle was even mentioned in an early draft of this script. And while we're on the subject of confidence games, the con used in this episode was based on a real one as well. 2 men named Philip Arnold and John Slack pulled it on the president of the San Francisco Bank of California, William Ralston, in 1871. And you know what? Arnold and Slack were even cousins, just like Hayes and Kidd. A whole other bunch of very important people fell for this scam too, including General George McClellan and Charles Tiffany. You know, of Tiffany's, where they had breakfast that one time. Oh, and you know what else I found out? They didn't even end up in prison, somehow. They both lived long, quiet lives afterwards. You know what, forget what I said a minute ago. Crime does pay. Okay, let's talk Fistful of Diamonds. We start with another sneak peek, with Hayes and the kid confronting a man named Binford. What's this about, you say? Well, let's find out. After the credits, we open on Binford and another man arguing about a bank robbery. Binford is the bank president, and the other man, Charlie Wells, is the manager, and he's accusing Binford of stealing from it. Wells is shocked, Horrified, scandalized, he warns Binford that if the money isn't returned to the bank vault by Monday, he's gonna tell on him. But since snitches get stitches, Binford just kills him. And then he takes even more money out of the vault, cracks himself on the head with a crowbar. Dude, you could kill yourself doing that. And then makes it look like an outside robbery, complete with blowing up his own vault. Also, I swear the music playing in this scene sounds so much like the Pink Panther tune. When the vault blows, we get the title of the episode, and then something weird happens. The guest star credits play over clips from later in the episode. It's very, very strange. It hasn't happened before, but I think it might happen again 1 or 2 more times. But if you're not going to be consistent with it, then why do it at all? This episode must have been running super short. We see Soapy in his huge-ass house. Man, crime really does pay. Welcoming Hayes and the kid inside. They briefly bring up the Gentleman's Jockey Club when they mention they need a favor, and he says he just did them a favor last month, so that's 1 point for continuity and a timeline. It's been a month since the Great Shell Game. And I guess Hayes didn't save his life, but rather he and Kid helped him avoid prison time. They tell Soapy that they were blamed for the Kingsburg bank robbery that we saw in the opening. Binford wasn't content with just staging the robbery. He went ahead and blamed it on Hayes and Kid. Then Soapy asks them if they did it. How dare you? They don't kill people. The boys want Soapy to teach him one of his swindles so they can get Binford in such deep trouble he'll have to admit that he lied about Hayes and Curry. And get him arrested for the murder, right? Right? Hello? Soapy says that you can't con a banker. They're too cautious. But after thinking it over, he thinks that maybe he can help them. I like that the boys dressed in their nice clothes to visit Soapy. That's Hayes in his brown suit and Kid in his gray one. Cue them dressed up like hobos, complete with dirt all over their faces. Where did they get these get-ups? From Soapy? They look ridiculous. Anyway, they go to Binford's bank and they want to rent a lockbox. He won't rent them one without knowing what's inside. They dump out a small bag of uncut diamonds, and Binford is instantly intrigued. He says he's a good judge of human nature and he believes he can trust the boys. Yeah, isn't that what the bad guy from Wrong Train to Brimstone said? He swears he won't tell anyone about the diamonds. Later that night, they spy him rushing from the jeweler's to have the stones appraised. He runs over to his mistress's room, jumping up and down to tell her about their good fortune. The boys patiently wait for him on the hotel porch, smoking cigars. And they're moving in pretty good unison here. I love it. He claims to want to help them, but they call him out on having their stones evaluated. He said it's true, but he had to make sure they were real, and the jeweler verified it. Hayes and Kid said that they can get a lot more stones. Binford sees dollar signs and leads them back to his mistress Betsy's room. Hayes and Binford talk business, but the kid is not even paying attention. He is all bedroom eyes staring down Betsy. Calm down, kid. The boys make like they're gonna work with him, but they need some good faith money first. $25,000 apiece. Binford says he doesn't have that kind of money lying around, but Hayes doesn't budge. Binford finally agrees, but he's going to have the stones checked out by T.F. Ayers in New York. T.F. Ayers, I guess, would be this universe's Tiffany's. The boys take a chance and let him send the stones off to be checked. Binford says if they're really worth what they think they are, then they have a deal. The next day, the boys are walking around town when Kid spots Betsy and just stares at her. Hayes encourages him to go hit on her so she'll be on their side, and the kid is all too happy to oblige. Tragically for him, Betsy is super not interested. She keeps trying to tell him to get lost, and he keeps pushing. I don't like that. Kid, stop it. She said no. Betsy may be a villain, but no still means no. She tells Kid that she's actually engaged to Mr. Binford, and right as she does, an ominous bell rings in the distance. It's pretty funny. Kid walks back to Hayes, embarrassed and dejected, and Hayes tells him, I said it would be nice to romance her. I didn't say it'd be easy. Back in Betsy's room, we see that she's got her own boyfriend on the side. So, Binford is married and sneaking around with Betsy, and Betsy is also sneaking around with somebody else. What is the point of this relationship? I mean, I know money's the point for her, but it's not working out so well, is it? Kid knocks on her door and practically forces his way in. He calls the boyfriend out and they start waving their dicks around. Kid effortlessly outdraws him and the guy gives up and leaves. Coward. Once they're alone, Kid tells her that he needs her help and that he will make it worth her while. He says they don't trust Binford and they need her to keep tabs on him. She insists that he's got the wrong idea about her. She fully intends to marry Binford as soon as he has enough money to ditch his wife and take her to Europe. Kid calls her out and knows that she'd rather make that trip without Binford. He offers her $10,000 and the chance to get away from Binford forever. She says she'll think about it. Aw, I thought for sure her and Binford were really in love. The next day, Binford gets the report back from TF Ayers and says that the diamonds are okay, so he wants to move forward with the deal once he sees the diamond field with his mining engineer. And also Betsy has to come for some reason. On the trail, Kid is worried what's going to happen once the engineer sees the field that they salted with diamonds. Hayes says they're just going to have to gamble, and then decides to call Binford out for lying again. Hayes saw the telegram from TF Ayers, and they said those diamonds were of the highest quality, and because he lied again, they're going to blindfold him and Betsy and the engineer on the way to the field so they don't know the location. And once they get there, it's just a patch of grass in the woods? Is it even big enough to be called a field? The three look around and Binford finds one, and then they go crazy and start finding them all over the ground, like little kids at an Easter egg hunt. Hayes and the kid look on, with Hayes smiling in satisfaction and the kid trying very hard not to laugh. It is funny watching these three grown adults running around like, "Ah! I found another diamond! Oh my god!" After they've calmed down, had their nappy naps and appy juice, they count 19 diamonds that they found. Kid whispers to Hayes that he thought they planted 21, and Hayes says, "What can you expect from a banker?" Too true. Back at Binford's office, he hands the boys over their $50,000, and Hayes hands him over the claim and the map to the field. They leave the office with the money, and Kid goes straight to see Betsy. He makes himself quite comfortable and asks her where Binford got the money. He says he has a hunch that it was embezzled from his own bank, but he wants to know for sure. Betsy doesn't respond. She says she's thought about his offer and has decided to stay with Binford because now he's going to have way more money than $10,000. Kid then sits right next to her and passively threatens to tell Binford about her boyfriend. And if she doesn't tell him where the money came from, the deal is off. She admits that fine, sure, he got it from his own bank, but now that they have the diamonds, he can just put it back in a few weeks and no one will know. Kid is satisfied. He and Hayes meet up with Binford to confess that he's been had. The diamonds they showed him are real, but they're only worth $25,000 altogether. Soapy told the boys that there's no one in the U.S. that can properly evaluate raw, uncut diamonds. They chose to believe him, and he was right. Binford's jeweler and the guy at TF Ayers didn't know what the hell they were talking about, just like the real guy at Tiffany's. They're going to give him his money back, so long as he tells the sheriff that he got the descriptions of the bank robbers all wrong. Now, naturally, this is kind of a confusing request. What would he care, he wonders. Besides, if he does that, the sheriff might think that he had something to do with the robbery. It really should be obvious why they want this done, but he's not getting it. And we're back to the sneak peek. I love the way both boys move in real close to him in a threatening way when they tell them that they're Hannibal Hayes and Kid Curry. They don't like being blamed for a bank they didn't rob, and they certainly don't like being accused of murder. Binford is properly intimidated. They assure him that as long as there's a retraction printed in the paper, they'll give him the money back. And if he doesn't, they'll disappear with his money and leave him to face prison time. Okay, cool. What about the poor dead guy? Remember Charlie Wells? The one who just couldn't stand by and let money be stolen from the bank because the citizens of that town trusted them. I know it's not really their problem and they're not exactly heroes, but an innocent man was murdered and Binford's just gonna get off the hook for it? No one cares? Or maybe not, because Lon Travers is in town, and this time he is not the Virginian. He came to town because he heard about the boys' part in the robbery, but I feel like it's been at least a week at this point. Like, what took you so long? Did you have to regenerate from James Drury? They promise Lum they can explain all of it and lead him off. The retraction is printed, and Betsy reads it very confused. She goes over to Kid's room and demands answers as to what's going on. So Kid tells her all about the con. She figures it can't be about the money or they would have just taken off the second they got it. She realizes that they must be Hayes and Curry. I guess that makes her smarter than Binford. He had to have it spelled out for him. She still wants something, so she offers the kid more information if he'll still fork over the $10,000. She confirms to him that Binford is the one who killed poor Charlie Wells and staged the robbery. Kid says that was more information than he expected, but unfortunately he doesn't have $10,000 to give, and then reveals that Lom and Hayes have been listening to the whole conversation. But how did they know she was going to come over to the kid's room? Or if she did, when she was going to do it? Seems like they just kind of got lucky with the timing there. Now that the money is safe with Lom, he's out. There's a Lom-shaped hole in the wall. And suddenly, Betsy doesn't believe they're Hayes and Curry because they wouldn't turn over $50,000 to a sheriff. Hayes just goes with it and says their names are Hotchkiss and Rembacher. He just have those in his back pocket? They're treasury agents, but she can't tell anybody. So, what, she doesn't get arrested? How about accessory after the fact? Was that not a law back then? In the tag, they go back to Soapy and they read in the paper that Binford ended up confessing to the murder. For some reason. Soapy's impressed. And Hayes and Kid are in their nice clothes again. They look so cute, and they got their little matching hats. And they're hats that match their outfits, not that match each other. He tells the boys to keep in touch. They hand back over his diamonds, and once they're gone, he starts counting them to make sure they're all there. That's fair. Like I said at the top, I don't know if I really like this one all that much, or if it's just such a breath of fresh air coming off the Great Shell Game and Return to Devil's Hole. The boys were only concerned with clearing their names and not so much with justice, which I guess doesn't really bother me. They are who they are. But I would have been disappointed if Binford had gotten away with the murder. And it was only luck that he didn't. Hayes and Kid didn't know that Lom was going to come to town, and Binford confessed to the murder anyway. They didn't tell him to do that. They just wanted him to say that it wasn't Hayes and Curry. It is so nice having the boys back together again. That chemistry really is what makes the whole show shine. Not just their dialogue or even the synchronized movements, but just the way they look at each other. I caught Hayes shooting glances at Kid all throughout the episode, and to me that just shows how much Pete Jewell was engaged with his screen partners, and how professional he was once the camera started rolling, no matter what was happening with them behind the scenes. Binford and Betsy were appropriately gross people. Binford couldn't stop lying to the boys, even though he thought he needed them to get rich. Also, the murder. Don't do that. And Betsy would only go to the highest bidder. They kind of deserve each other. I hope they do get married. The line of the episode goes to Hayes. When they first meet the mining engineer, he asks if the mine is, I couldn't quite understand what he's saying, a Borst mine or a carbon mine? And Hayes blinks at him, smiles, and said, "That's right," and then changes the subject. Hilarious. And the episode goes to, I'm gonna say, the kid. I don't like the way he first pursues Betsy, but I do like the way he's able to get information out of her later. Next time on Alias, Smith & Jones, the boys are caught up in a siege at a relay station, and Randolph Mantooth is there. We're on our way, Rampart. Emergency. Research for this podcast comes mainly from the wonderful book Alias, Smith & Jones, The Story of Two Pretty Good Bad Men by Sandra K. Sagala and Joanne M. Bagwell. Additional research about Soapy Smith comes from Kathy Weiser-Alexander's website, Legends of America. Additional information about Philip Arnold and John Slack comes from the article The Great Diamond Hoax of 1872 by Robert Wilson. Thanks for listening.